everybody, and welcome to another amazing workshop that we're going to host today. We're super excited for today's topic. But first, my name is Dorima Hamilton, and I'm the Executive Director of Ideal CDC. And today I have joining me
Josh. My name is Josh, or Joshua, whatever you want to call me. I'm a program director here at Avance Latino. I'm so excited that you guys are joining us today. We have our friends back from HSBC Bank. We're so happy they're back with us again.
Yes, we've missed them so much. We did a series with them back in September. And so, even though it feels like years ago, I know it's only 2 months ago, but we're so happy that they're joining us here today, just in time for the holiday season, which brings me to our topic for today, which is holiday spending, how to create a budget. I know this year is a little different, so you might have saved a little money, but I know that those of you that are parents, I know the kids, their needs, their desires, their wants, their Christmas list probably got longer. So who knows, right? But it's good to have a plan. It's good to have everything mapped out. How are you going to budget? How are you going to spend this holiday season and make it a much more meaningful year? Spending that quality time with our friends and family this year, whether it's in person or socially distanced or virtually, right? And so we wanted to bring this topic to you guys to help navigate through some of those topics, some of that topic about budgeting, saving, and specifically around this holiday season when it could be so easy to just swipe that credit card and then deal with it next year, right? But today we want to help you with some of that, and we're really excited that our friends at HSBC are joining us here today for this amazing topic. So be sure to pull up a notebook, take some notes. We'll be monitoring the chat down below. So if you have any questions throughout the series of this workshop, please feel free to ask those questions in the comment box down below. I have my friend here, my brother Joshua, helping me navigate through some of those questions. So if we don't get to them right there, stay until the very end of the workshop where we'll be addressing some of that. Before I pass it on to my friends, I would like to invite you to like this video, share it, tag someone that you think might benefit from this topic. Maybe your spouse, significant other, perhaps boyfriend, girlfriend, parents, they're a little more loose with a credit card and might need to get this information. So tag them, share this information with them, and help encourage them to be a little smarter this season. But without further ado, I would like to invite my friend Evelyn Escobar from HSBC and Marie that will be joining us today for this workshop. We're super excited for that. So welcome, ladies. And if you would like to introduce yourselves and get started with the topic.
Thank you so much, Dorima. We're really, really excited to be here. And even though we were just with you a few weeks ago, it seems like a very long time. So it's certainly
Yeah.
nice to catch up again. My name is Marie Pedraza. I'm with HSBC. I'm part of the community development team based in New York. And basically, one of the things that my team does is to provide financial education to our communities on various topics. And today, we're going to speak about budgeting and sort of bring to mind some of the things that might be useful as we are in the midst of the holiday season. So let's go to the, Evelyn, do you want to introduce yourself and then I'll go on? Okay, she's still on mute. Okay, so let's just go on. Keisha? Okay, so some of you may have attended our prior budgeting class, and this one will be a little bit different because, the holiday season is in full swing, and some of us may have started with a plan for spending and for paying off debt, and some of us probably had no plan and will end up spending a lot more than we had anticipated. So what we'd like to do today is revisit setting financial goals, assessing where you are today, creating a spending and savings plan. Those two things must go together. Paying off debt. Hopefully there won't be too much additional debt that you'll have to worry about in the coming year. And of course, adapting as life changes. The workbook and the worksheet that I referenced in the slide are available at hsbcyourmoneycounts.com, and we will share that information a little bit later. Whenever you're making money decisions, it is important to set financial goals. Basically, a long-term goal is 5 to 10 years, and that could be something like purchasing a home. short-term goals, medium-term goals, I should say, are between 3 and 5 years. That might be maybe buying an apartment, maybe taking a trip, maybe buying a car. And a short-term goal is really a year or less. Holiday expenses fall under that category. Regardless of what the length of the goal is, you really need to make sure that the goals are SMART. And SMART is an acronym that's used to define the characteristics of a goal. The goals should be specific, they should be measurable, they should be attainable, realistic, and timely. So basically, a specific, you have to really say to yourself, this is what I like to do, and this is how I need to get it done. It should be measurable. So you need to find some way of saying, where am I going to keep the funds that I'm saving? They should be in a savings account. It should be attainable and reachable according to your budget. So don't set a savings number that's too high when from week to week or from month to month, you're always going to have some difficulty meeting it because you really didn't think it through. And alongside that, it should be realistic, and again, realistic to your budget. And of course, it should be timely. You have to set a specific time frame. If we're talking about holiday gifts, and this is really for next year, you really should be saying to yourself, well, I'm going to be spending X number of dollars over the 2021 holiday season. And for me to do that during the year, I need to save this much money per month. One of the ways that you need to sort of look at your spending before you start tackling a budget is to sort of keep track of what you're doing right now, get a real sense of how you're doing it, and try to find ways in which you're going to change it. So as I read these items here, think about how often you do these things, whether you do them sometimes, always, or never. I keep a monthly written plan that addresses my income and spending. I track my ongoing spending to make sure I stick to my written spending plan. I set aside at least 10% of my income to cover my living expenses for 3 to 6 months if I become unemployed. I pay off my unsecured credit card balances each month, save for periodic expenses such as car registration, insurance, car repairs, vacations, and gifts, place money into my retirement account each payday, and I review my credit report once a year. So from these items, number one is something that you can definitely do today, and something that might be a little bit surprising to you as you do it through the holiday season, as you're shopping for gifts or as you're shopping for food. If you start tracking your monthly expenses, you're certainly going to find that during the month of December, you will likely be spending a bit more than you did during the month of November. Make sure that even though you are spending more, you're not losing sight of number three, which is trying to set aside at least 10% towards savings. And in actuality, you might need to really set aside a little bit more in case you are using your credit card rather than cash, and you need to sort of figure out how you're going to pay that off, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And also making sure that you are redoing your credit report. So during this time of the year, and really throughout this whole year, the number of identity theft cases has grown tremendously. And during the holiday season, there's a lot more activity online. So obviously more opportunities for people to steal personal information. So it's important that you look at your credit report once a year. And you can get a copy of it through annualcreditreport.com, and I'm sure Dorima will share that information later. That is a free credit report that you can now get once a week. It used to be something that you were entitled to get once a month from each of the 3 credit agencies, but because of the huge number of fraud and identity theft incidences, until April of 2021, anyone can go on that site and can request a credit report weekly. And the purpose of that is to enable you to catch problems, more quickly before they get out of hand. Next. Okay. This is a quick exercise that pretty much brings to mind what it means to actually spend money on coffee every single day. So in this particular example, you're spending $3 for coffee 5 days a week. And over a 52-week period, this comes to $780. Okay, which is an amount that you can easily use to cover your Christmas gifts. And if not that, you can certainly use it to pay off debt or to start funding an account that's going to serve you in case there's an emergency and you need to have savings to cover certain expenses. Once you have a sense of where your money is going, how you're spending it, and have tracked your expenses, you're now going to sit down and really start putting together your spending and savings plan, which is really your budget. So the first thing you're going to do is list your sources of income, whether they are salary, maybe there's alimony, maybe there's child support, unemployment, public assistance, whatever the sources are for all the members of your household that actually receive income, they should be listed into this category. Once you've done that, you're going to list the expenses. And the expenses fall into several categories. In this particular slide, a fixed expense is really something like your rent or maybe your car payment that doesn't change from month to month. A variable expense is the opposite. It can change from time to time. So it could be food expenses, it could be gasoline expenses. Periodic expense is something like insurance or Christmas gifts. You know, these are things that happen once a year or more than once a year, but you can plan ahead for. So in essence, you can take an expense of, let's say $1,200 a year that you either know is going to be your insurance premium or that you want to save for the holiday expenses. And all you're going to do is divide that by 12, and every single month save 1/12 of that amount so that when the time comes, you'll have the money in place and you will not have to access a credit card. Unless, of course, you want to use the points or the rewards from the credit card. And if you do that, then at least you have the money ready to be able to pay that account off quickly. And then savings is listed here as an expense as well, because really it is a critical part not only of your budget, but really of your future. It is what's going to enable you to live a better life and to save for retirement, maybe save to buy a home, and really to help you meet your financial goals. The little tip here on the right-hand side makes reference to Green Path Financial Wellness, which is a nonprofit organization, which is our partner for the financial wellness platform that we're using today. And they do provide free phone counseling in several languages. You simply need to express your language preference when you call, and you can speak to them about creating a budget, about credit, understanding credit, not understanding your credit report. If there's identity theft issues, you can talk to them about it as well. So it might be something for you to keep in mind, and we will share their information as well, particularly come January when you may need to be putting your budget back in place or maybe making some adjustments to it depending on what happened over the holiday season. Next. And here again, another reminder of the importance of savings and paying yourself first. So whether you pay yourself, ideally you should pay yourself, 10% of whatever you bring into the household. But if you can't do that, you should just pay yourself whatever you can, and at minimum, pay yourself $1. And if you pay yourself $1 once a week or every other day or once a month, by the end of the year, you'll still have more than you started out with. And in time, you'll make adjustments and maybe be able to save more. You should definitely save for emergencies and look to having a emergency fund that will cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. Save for periodic expenses, and here again, Christmas, holidays, the holiday season is a periodic expense that you can definitely save for, and save for your goals. And among your goals could be things like buying a car, buying a home, making sure you have enough money for Christmas gifts, or maybe make sure you have enough money to fund a college education. It is important that the goals and the savings are measurable. And one way to be able to measure it is to be able to have it in a savings account, maybe consider direct deposit, and maybe consider having an online savings account, because savings accounts by nature are less accessible than checking accounts because they are meant to keep the money away from you because you are actually saving. But if you use an online account, there's an extra step, I guess, for getting your funds. And usually because they don't have brick and mortar locations, the interest rate can be a little bit better than might be at your local bank. Next. So once you've set up an emergency fund, you can now look at more long-term goals, and this is really more around buying a home, which is a big asset, saving for your retirement, and you may actually start diversifying. So going from having just a savings account to possibly looking at stocks and bonds and mutual funds. Make sure that if you do that, you consult the financial planner. It's really good to get guidance. Even if you do end up making the investments yourself, at least you'll be able to have a conversation about what's out there, what the difference is between one thing and another. The workbook that is the companion for this particular session is available at us.humanaccounts.com, and you'll see that we'll share that later, and you'll be able to access the work for yourself. And it has a lot of definitions and certainly a lot more detail. Many of you may have just finished revisiting your benefits plans. This is the time of the year in the fall when companies send out what the changes are going to be in health insurance, and hopefully some of you who attended our last session or other sessions that Ideal has hosted, maybe for the first time actually signed up for a 401k or a 403b, which are retirement plans where there's a contribution from the employer, which in some cases can double your savings. These are tax-free investments, so it's really good for you to take advantage of it, particularly if there's an employee match. And very often the employer also provides some assistance in terms of connecting you to financial planners and folks that can better help you guide your investments and take into account what you're interested in, how concerned you are about losing your money. Is it better to be in a mutual fund? Is it better to be in the stock market? And also, how long do you have to save? Are you someone who's just entering the workforce? Are you about to retire? And all that does come into play into the kinds of investments that you need to make. But it is never too early to start investing. And definitely the tip here is to start now and as soon as possible. If you're on your first job and you're 20 years old, you have a long time in which you can build a very reasonable savings. So definitely get started right away. These are some sample suggestions for spending. During the holiday season, you may find that you are spending, maybe you're accumulating debt that in the end, by the end of December, maybe more than 15% of what your total expenses should be. It's possible that during that time also, the 10% that you had allocated to savings may be a little bit less because you use some of that savings to actually pay off debt or to use for the Christmas holidays. But in essence, your net income should be allocated more or less along these lines, which basically says 35% for housing, 25% for living expenses, 15% for transportation, and also 15% for debt, and 10% for savings. If you do live in a high cost market, as California is, as New York is, you're likely spending more than 35% on housing, and so you're going to have to adjust in the other categories. But just in terms of the holiday season, debt may be changing, and along with that, your credit score may be changing, because once you get closer to the limit of your credit line, your credit score will drop. And so your goal is to be able to roll that back as soon as possible and try to be no more than 30% of whatever your credit line is. So if you have a line of $1,000, you shouldn't be spending more than $300. And if you do get to $1,000, then you need to set up a plan for paying that off as quickly as possible. Likewise with your savings. Your 10% that you saved, for the year for savings may include whatever you put together for gifts. And in actuality, the gift monies, the savings for the emergency fund should all be in separate accounts, so that the accounts that need to stay whole and are there for the long run are not impacted by the purchases that you need to make during the holiday season. Next. This is a sample of a budget worksheet that is included in the workbook companion, the companion workbook for this class. On the right-hand side, which you probably can't see too well, but under living expenses and toward the bottom, there is a section for holidays and gifts. And whether you use a paper worksheet or whether you use an app like Mint or Clarity Money or many others, you really need to be very thorough, both in listing your income and listing all your expenses. And even though we only allow one line here, you're probably going to need more than one line. If you're looking at Christmas expenses, what are we talking about? We're talking about gifts. A gift comes possibly with gift wrapping paper, maybe shipping charges. Maybe you're buying gifts for a lot of different people. So in actuality, when you're listing the holiday gift expenses, you should list. Who you're giving it to, what are you getting them, how much is it, how many are you buying for various people. Everything that you purchase, your Christmas tree, your wreaths, your lights, whatever comes into the household that wasn't there last month that is related to the season should have a budget of its own. And only by doing that will you have a sense of how much you're actually spending, whether it's on food, entertainment. And one of the things that Rima and I were talking about a little bit earlier is that this Christmas season isn't it differently. I usually host, maybe 20 or 25 people, and I'm not hosting anybody other than my sons this year. So there's going to be 4 of us, which basically means that my expenses will be a lot better than they would have been otherwise. And that may be true for many of you. And if we do have that sort of windfall, for lack of a better word, and you can repurpose that money toward paying off existing debt or toward establishing an emergency fund, or really funding a goal of buying a home or doing something that's really going to become a workable asset for you. That's really how you should think about it. And now look at it as, well, now I can go on vacation. And definitely not that you can't go on vacation, but if there are other things that are pending that are costing you money, because having interest build up on your credit card does cost you money. And so it's important for you to really think about, what will I do with the extra funds if I happen to have any extra funds. When it comes to shipping, and I just made this decision the other night, the company I was buying for basically had a cutoff of Sunday night. If I didn't buy it then, there's no free shipping. Well, I guess the gift is going to have to come in after Christmas, because I'm certainly not going to pay either extra shipping, or if I had the option of getting free shipping, why now pay more money? And it sometimes sounds like you're a little bit maybe stingy, but in reality, it is a way for you to better manage your money and to do it consistently, and to hopefully get your children to think along the same lines, so that as they grow up, they just are more thoughtful in how they spend their funds. Again, even though many of us are using credit cards for the holidays, and in actuality accruing new debt, if we do that, we should also have a plan for getting rid of the new debt and not just carrying over the new debt on top of the old debt. There was a survey done not too long ago, and GreenPath shared this with us, that people spent, I guess, in the last holiday season about $1,325,000, $1,325 per person, right? And it doesn't sound like a huge amount of money, but it's not a small amount of money. And 75% of those people felt that they really were most likely carrying that debt for over a few months. Come January, when the bill comes, most were not going to be able to pay it off in full in January, and they were going to be carrying it off for a few months. But 10% thought that they would only be able to make the minimum payment on that debt. So that's sort of the second whammy in a way, right? You have a debt of $1,300, has a rate, let's say of 10%, 50%, 20%, whatever it is. If you're going to pay it off in 3 months, you're going to pay X number of dollars in interest. If you're going to pay it off in 12 months or 2 years or 3 years, it's going to add more interest. And you'll see that a little bit better when we get to the next slide. But here again, we like to remind you that if your situation is such that you are really finding dealing with your credit difficult, you do need to contact the creditors. You need to really think about how you're going to be able to adjust those balances, whether it's through a refinance or through a modification by having a discussion with your lender to make everything more affordable to you. And you can also contact GreenPath and have that consultation with them and have them sort of explain each option to you and see what you're more comfortable with. And it's a free call, and you should definitely do it rather than worry about what you're going to do with that. And so that brings us to a view of how interest rates and minimum payments really affect how much you pay back. So in this particular scenario, we have a credit card balance of $10,000, and it has an interest rate of 19%. And basically, in scenario one, we're making payment of $100 a month, and basically under that scenario is going to take, I'm sorry, the payment of $200 a month, and under that scenario is going to take 100 months to pay off that loan, and basically the interest that you're going to pay is $9,971. If you add more and actually increase your monthly payment from $200 to $300, it significantly lowers the term under which you're going to be paying. So you're going from 100 months to 48 months, and you're pretty much cutting in half the amount of interest that you pay back. So even if you're not ready to double your payment or anything else, at least become more aware that you are making choices each time. And if this month you can make a payment that's double, do it. If next month you can only add another $10 to it, do it. Just try to stretch a little bit so you're not letting this sort of go from month to month and adding the interest so that at some point, whatever discounts you received or whatever rewards you got are really meaningless because it's costing you more than you actually got in return. Next. Of course, a lot of things happen. Many of them are out of control. I mean, we have a pandemic, and the pandemic certainly caused major economic upsets in a lot of people's lives. And under normal circumstances, things just like a marriage and having children or getting a divorce or health expenses, changing jobs, death, any of these things are going to change your budget. And so the bottom line here is that the budget is a flexible document that you have to also adjust it. So if any of these things happen, you need to sit down with your family, with your partner, to sort of see what needs to change and where it needs to change. In this example, have a couple that is expecting their first child. So they are now going to make decisions that they need to make for the first time, buying baby items, maybe start saving for the child to have an education with. That education is college or vocational school, whatever it may be, but just to have money saved for that. Talking about how we might have to do to survive with just one income if it turns out that either one of you wants to stay with a child, or maybe one of you has to stay with a child because the child maybe needs some special care for some time in his life. So all these things are important for you to think about. And for most of us, the conversation comes when we're actually in it and having to make a decision, as opposed to when we're about to enter it, where I think we probably can think a little bit more clearly and spend more time trying to figure out what the best outcome might be and the best course would be for us to take. Buying a house, it's a long-term goal. And if that is one of your goals, don't let the holiday season sort of sidetrack you from that. So if you're now decided that you want to buy a house and you have been saving all along, let's say $200 a month or whatever the case may be, keep that up. Don't say to yourself, well, I need to now have Christmas presents, so I need to kind of change the course of buying a new house, because the house is an asset. The house is really a goal that is not only going to provide some financial security for you, but will provide something for your heirs as well. And you really need to think ahead at every decision you make. Holidays are a short term, a short term in terms of time, but a long term in terms of expense. And there are people probably on this workshop we're still paying for last year's Christmas. So we don't want to be that person. And if you are that person, come 2021, you want to take a fresh new look and find some way to be able to pay that off and move forward in a better financial position. College is one thing that has been changed a lot during the pandemic. And maybe some of the money that was set aside for college, it's not being used right now because maybe your child decided to postpone, or maybe they are now going to online classes instead of physically going to school and taking fewer classes. So that whatever money you had saved for the college education, for some of you, you may actually have held on to more than not. But basically, as you and your children are exploring going to college, you need to have some real sort of in-depth conversations, not only about how you're paying for it, but who is paying for it. Is it going to be your child getting loans? Is it going to be you co-signing for your children, which you really should not do? But this is not a college class, but you should really not compromise your future and your retirement in order to pay for college. Definitely your child has a way longer life ahead of him or her to be able to take care of those expenses than you do if you're approaching retirement. So it's really important to have those discussions, and also consider whether or not two-year college is a better option for now, and then transfer into a 4-year. Make sure that you look into all kinds of grants and scholarships that exist. You know, not everything is driven by whether or not you're a fabulous athlete or have some amazing talent. You know, some things are just driven by socioeconomic circumstances. So if your family doesn't have a lot of money and there's a real economic need, there are definitely organizations that provide grants for that. And very often grants kind of sit there and they get unused because people assume that unless you're like a stellar at something, there's no money available. And in some cases there is. And of course, compare the cost of college, including travel, because if you do decide to go out of state, there will be expenses for you to get back and forth, and also consider the cost of what you're planning to do with your career. If you're planning to become an archaeologist, or if you're going to become an actor, or become a doctor, all these things come with different price tags. And the price tag is not just the cost of the education, but also how much you're going to earn, not only for the first few years, but in some cases for a lifetime. Some careers that don't necessarily have cost of living increases automatically, and they tend to be low-paying careers. So that needs to be considered as well when you're considering college. And I think that brings us to the end, and a little bit of I guess we'll do a little bit of some of what we learned today. Hopefully you have a better understanding of how important it is to set financial goals and also assess your current financial situation. You cannot do one without the other. And in assessing your financial situation, you need to be very honest with yourself and with your family. Create a spending and savings plan. And that should be reversed. You should be creating a saving and then spending plan. Paying off debt should be key. And I keep saying that because we are in that point of time where we're just incurring probably more debt than we do at any other time of the year. And of course, adapt as life changes, and you do manage your own money, and you should take full control of being a good money manager and passing that information along to your children. As far as next steps, reviewing your financial goals annually and definitely more often if circumstances change, creating a plan that aligns with your goals. And you may have different accounts. So even though we're talking about save to pay yourself first, you may actually be having separate accounts for different things, whether they're for holiday, whether they're for a home, whether they're for retirement. As time goes on, you'll be sort of segregating these accounts. Make sure that you track your spending and adjust as needed. Pay down your debt and save for long-term goals. And if nothing else, just take some time this weekend to look at how much you spent so far on the holiday season. It's not too late to still try to adjust your budget somewhat and maybe make some decisions that will save you a little bit of money. And in the end, any decision that you make where you're saving and you're really getting in handle of how you're going to control your expenses are just bringing you a little bit closer to achieving both your dreams and hopefully your financial goals. And I guess with that, we're going to share the information from GreenPath. Again, GreenPath is a nonprofit organization. Phone number is 866-692-9629, and that is a number that is designated for HSBC. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but basically you can they have people who speak many languages, and all you really have to do is to express your language preference, and they'll put somebody on that can help you in a language that you're comfortable with. So it's really worth the call, and feel free to share this information with, family, friends, colleagues. It is pretty useful, and also just to go online and see and read some of the materials that they have posted on financial topics. The HSBC, go back a little bit. Yeah, so the HSBC materials can be accessed at us.com. Your money counts. And you can get the companion workbook for this particular class. Also on our financial wellness side, there are lots of calculators where you can sort of play around with, how much of a loan would I qualify for if I want to buy a home, see what an impact making a double payment or a triple payment might make, how you might pay off debt over the course of time. So there's a lot of scenarios that you can work out, and hopefully one of them can help you move on to paying off debt more quickly or saving more quickly as well. And now I think we're open for questions.
Marie. Okay. Thank you, Marie. I appreciate you. Sorry.
Oh, maybe not. So use our contact slide if you need to get in touch with myself or Adeta slide. Here's our contact information. Feel free to send questions to us as well. And here on the upper left side is also the address for the financial wellness side that has all the financial calculators and also a lot of other materials.
Yeah. Be sure to take advantage of those of you that are watching. Thank you so much, Marie, for that amazing presentation and just giving guidance and a pathway on how to budget, how to save, how to better manage our finances, especially during this new season that we're in, right? Whether it's the holiday season or COVID, but being able to have a plan makes things a lot easier and puts you more in control. I know, speaking for myself personally, when I have at least a budget, me and my husband every month to this day, we still create a budget. What are our goals for this month as far as savings, debt, and right now, holiday season, what is our budget when it comes to that? It makes it so much easier versus going to the store and just navigating through all those different sales and being tempted versus this is what I'm already going to spend. I said I was going to stick to $200. So let's stick to that. And it has made a whole lot of difference, especially around this time when you may see more sales than before because people are trying to get rid of stuff because of COVID. Stores have closed and reopened, so getting rid of past merchandise, right? And so it could be a little more tempting, but those of you that are watching, I definitely invite you guys to check out the Green Path website. I've checked it out myself. They have amazing resources there. If you would like to receive a copy of this presentation, check out the HSBC website so you can download it for yourself, but also get the guide that goes along with this presentation that will help you with some of those other tools like the budgeting and all that, so that you can start navigating through that and talking about it as a household. And I think inviting your kids to be part of the conversation is very key and important because it makes them aware of how the household looks when it comes to finances. I know I've had parents tell me in the past, it's actually made it easier for me to tell my kids, no, we can't afford that, because they get to see it on paper versus I always tell them that, no, we can't. But when they actually see it on paper, it makes it a lot easier to have that conversation. But anyway, some of the questions that we've had come in is, one of them is around retail credit cards. And what are your thoughts or experience or advice on retail credit cards? Would you suggest those are okay compared to a bank credit card, or are they a little different when it comes to reporting on your credit, a retail credit card versus a bank credit card?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to reporting on the credit, there is no difference. I mean, pretty much any, whether it's a MasterCard or a Macy's card, reporting is really up to each place. So basically, they will report to the credit agency, and really the difference is going to be whether they're going to consider a late payment uh, 5 minutes after the time it's due. So if it's due at 11:59 and you pay at 12:01, is that considered a late payment, or do they give you a little bit of leeway? But those are all specific things that
Mm-hmm.
you can just read about in the contract, which is really the application that you complete as far as applying for the credit card. So as far as reporting, there's not a difference because it's a bank card versus a store card.
Mm.
The primary difference that I've seen is on the interest rate. So store cards usually carry a much higher interest rate than a, let's say, a Chase or HSBC or the Citibank MasterCard that you might be able to get for, let's say, 12%, 13%, 14%, but Target might be 18, 19, 20%.
Mm.
So I'm just saying, Target, it
Right.
could be something else, but store cards tend to have much higher interest rates.
Yeah.
They also tend to have lower limits.
Mm-hmm.
Very often, they don't want you to go shopping like crazy and then not be able to pay. So they're a little bit more conservative on the lines of credit that they will give you. A bank, very often you get your first card from a bank that you already have a banking relationship with, so they already know you as a customer, most likely on the checking side or savings account side, and so they're more likely to give you a slightly bigger credit card. But keep in mind that in economic difficult times like we are today, um, 2 years ago, you might have gotten on your same income, you might have gotten a credit card with a line of $10,000. If you were to apply today, it might be more like $7,000 because there's a lot of
Mm.
uncertainty as to whether or not people are going to be able to keep their jobs or be able to pay back. So all those things are part of credit decisions.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. Yeah. I had no idea, but would make sense, that companies are trying to be a little more conservative with how much credit they want to lend out based on where we're at right now as a country and being able to pay that back, because at the end of the day, they need to pay their bills too, right? Their employees and all of that. So, um, they want to be more careful with that. I also have found too, like you mentioned, Marie, that retail credit cards also sometimes come with annual fees, or they only give you a zero interest for 6 months and then or a year versus like a traditional at a bank. There's a little more flexibility when it comes to, like you said, the credit, I mean the interest rate, but also sometimes I've seen 18 months zero interest versus like retails sometimes it's a little shorter than that, but um
And
yeah.
I would say the rewards vary also, of course, right? So
Right.
rewards on a Mastercard Visa might be broader than
Mm.
just getting discounts at that particular store,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so there's some differences, but in the end, I think that if you basically have credit and you really plan to pay it off quickly, it almost doesn't matter what you have, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
your goal is really to try to have a low interest rate card if that's possible, if you have to make monthly payments.
Mhm.
But if you're trying to pay it off every single month, you can still get the benefit without the cost. And in that scenario, it doesn't matter who has the card unless you're just comparing benefits.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that brings me into the next question, just like making sure that you read that contract, because I have found even just working with different families that sometimes they get those retail credit cards, for example, like Nordstrom's or Macy's, and it might be zero interest if you purchase in the store, but if you do outside purchases, there might be a cost, right? They might charge you some interest. And I've seen that in the past. I don't know if they're doing that still to this year, but making sure you read the fine print. And so that's another thing that I wanted to ask. That's another question that came in is when applying for a credit card, what are some key things to look out for before you say, okay, I made my decision? Because, especially when you're at a retail, you feel that social pressure, which is why I don't suggest like
Social.
applying at the retail because, okay, I don't want to sit here and read a 30-page contract while the line is 10 people long and they're all hating me. So, what are some key things in that contract that you would suggest people look over before signing up for that credit card?
Well, I think the main thing is, what happens if you miss your payment? And
I don't want to
sometimes
see.
you miss your payment purely by mistake, right? So
Yeah.
if you miss your payment, very often it means that your interest rate is going to go from, let's say, 12% to 18%,
Oh, wow.
or some very large number. So
Yeah.
to me, that's the key thing. And how long do you have between today and your next payment, right? So
Hmm.
is your billing cycle 22 days or 25 days or 29 days? Because we all assume it's 30.
Yeah,
Now, we'll
that's
say, oh,
true.
it's 30 days, but companies have different billing cycles. So you should be aware of that as well. So to me, those are any fees and how long your introductory offer is good for.
Yeah.
Because very often, again, we also assume it's got to be a year, but it might really only be 6 months.
Yeah.
And if within those 6 months you miss a payment, then there may be both a fee plus an increase to your interest rate and possibly a decrease to the line that you thought you had. So depending on the organization, there are a lot of punitive things that could happen, some of which are minor, but
Yeah.
definitely different from what you originally thought you signed up for.
No, definitely. Those are good things. And I didn't even think about that, even just for me personally, to look at what their billing cycle looks like. Because, like you said, I assume that it's 30 days, but it could be much shorter than that, which would make sense for a lot of people that, oh, I thought it was on the 25th, but it's really on the 22nd. That's just when my payment is due, but the
Yeah.
closing date was the 22nd of every month. So,
Yeah. And that helps you also make decisions like if you want to just pay off the balance, you know that you can pay it off before the next cycle without incurring
mm-hmm.
interest, as opposed to paying the balance and then finding out that you paid it after the cycle, so you paid interest anyway. Right? So
Right,
you really
right.
do need to pay attention to the contract.
Yeah, yeah. And, if you're watching and you feel pressure to get that credit card, I would say don't do it. Because you want to have time to look over what you're doing. Sometimes, like, I know the salespeople are a little aggressive, or sometimes, like, they have a really good incentive. Like, you get 50% off your entire order and with throwing these holiday socks. So it can be a little enticing to say the least. But if you're feeling that pressure, it might not be a good time. You want to be sure of what you're signing up for because I've been guilty of this when I was younger. I signed up for every credit card because I wanted free stuff. Who doesn't want free stuff or discounts? But then you're going to have to pay it sooner or later and you forget because you don't feel that right now instantly. You see it 30 days from now or whenever you get your credit card in the mail, you're like, oh my God, I just spent $2,000 and I didn't realize because $100 here, $100 there, but it all adds up. And
Yeah.
so keeping that in mind when you're signing up for credit cards during the holiday season, because
Yeah.
sometimes the gifts can be a little exciting, right?
Yeah, and actually, the other side of that too is that if you pay your bills on time and everything is fine and you stay within your 30-40% of your line may be increased. So you
Oh,
might get a letter one day that says, hey, your line went from 1,000 to 2,500 or something like that. And the good part of that is that it immediately increases your credit score
oh,
because
yeah, it
your
does.
credit score those take into account how much credit you have, and having this new influx of additional credit
Yeah.
means that you're using less of your overall credit, so your credit score improves. What you have to do is be disciplined, and not feel that because you now have an extra $2,500, you now have this new path that you can take and buy all this other stuff that you weren't planning to take. So it does require some discipline as you're managing your credit
I
accounts.
know, especially with credit cards, do not increase your lifestyle. That doesn't mean it's a bonus. It's like you see, like you said, make sure you be cognizant of what you're going to be spending on, but also, don't raise your lifestyle based on that credit limit. Because, like Marie said, it's happened to me before where I'm like, oh, I got a credit increase, and Credit Karma let me know that my credit score went up. So, which is a great thing because my debt to income ratio is lower. So
Mhm.
that's a good thing. Another question here that came in, let me pull it up. Um, are banks such as yourself or other banks offering any um deals for accounts right now, like for people trying to either open a new account or open a credit card with your bank? Any deals right now?
Well, I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to defer to us sending you the information later on. I usually
Yeah.
prefer that information be given by the people who actually are doing it day to day. But
Yeah.
also, our workshops are about learning, and
Right.
so we don't really like to promote products in a workshop that we really think it's education rather than sales.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. I think like if any of you have any questions regarding any sort of loan products, whether it's housing, small business, personal, credit cards, bank accounts, reach out. There's their contact info on the screen right there. Reach out to Marie, reach out to Aday. They'll be more than happy to help you themselves or connect you to the right person that can help you with those questions that you have specifically on your case that you have. But other than that, I think those are the only questions we had coming in during the workshop. I don't know if there's any last minute tips or suggestions that you would like to share before we head out for the day, well, for this workshop.
No, I think that the tip is to really, between now and the end of the year, take some time to sort of reassess what you've done so far for this particular holiday season.
Yeah,
So come January, you're ready to have kind of like an honest conversation with yourself and your family as you plan out for next year's holiday season, whether you
yeah,
intend to spend more, you intend to spend less. The goal is not to spend so you're incurring additional debt.
right.
And if you're incurring additional debt, you're going to have additional savings to cover it. And I
Yeah.
think that's just a good way to go forward, and to really start thinking about it, beginning with what you're spending today.
Yes, 100%. Well, thank you so much. And if you're watching, thank you so much for watching and joining us here today. We'll be doing this same workshop today at 2:30. So, in about 35 minutes, we'll be doing the same topic but in Spanish. So, if those of you that are watching, you have a family member or friend that speaks Spanish, please feel free to share this and invite them. There's still time to sign up for this workshop and watch it. But with that, I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I'm sure we'll be seeing you guys soon. Thank you, HSBC, for joining us. Marie, Evelyn, Aday, Keisha, and the rest of the family there at HSBC for bringing us this amazing workshop to those of us that are watching here today on our pages. So thank you all so much, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy holidays. Bye bye.